morning, Pam. How are you? I'm good. How are you? Good. Yeah, all good. Looking forward to this. Yeah. Great, everyone. We please join us. We'll be starting. We'll be starting in about 7 minutes. 7 minutes. Thank you. Yeah, perfect. Perfect. Yeah, 7 minutes. Perfect. On time, every time. Not yet. You'll get a signal. You know, I'll start and then yourself and Pam will come on. We'll be starting in about 4 minutes. Yeah, great. Lovely. 4 minutes. Thank you very much.
Recording in progress.
We'll be starting in 2 minutes. 1 minute, 58 seconds, to be precise. Wonderful. Take a seat and get comfortable. Yeah, I think, Habib, we can lock the door now. Make sure nobody can get out. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and so nice to see some new faces that have just arrived. And those of you here were for Supply Chain SEF 2023. Great to see you still have an interest after all our discussion yesterday. So now we're into the ICC Digital Standards Initiative, and we're having a global launch of something really important, key trade documents and data elements, something that we've talked a lot about for the last 2 days. So we're going to have some cutting-edge analysis and best practice recommendations. And I think you all know me. I'm Vincent O'Brien, the Director of ICC UAE, and I've been involved in trade facilitation for a long time. So I really think today is an important day, and just to tell you a little why I think it's so important, around about the time I was born, which is about 25 years ago, well, maybe a little bit longer, okay? A little bit longer, there was an innovation in trade that changed the world. And that was that about the time I was born, you can figure it out, or a little bit earlier, maybe 5-7 years earlier, a gentleman called Malcolm McLean. He was in the shipping area, and he was involved in the shipping of goods, dealing with exporters and importers. So we already had ships. We already had airplanes. We had cargo planes flying 100 years ago. We already had sellers. We already had buyers. But he was thinking to himself with a friend casually, and he said, you know what? If we put goods in shoe boxes instead of being loosely thrown into a ship, we could multiply global trade. I don't know that he said global trade, but he said trade. And he was right, because since then till now, global trade has grown by nearly 70 times in that period of time. So really, at that time, we already had ships, we already had planes, we already had goods with exporters and importers. We already had shoe boxes. So then they designed a very special shoe box, and that was the beginning of the containerization. So such a simple idea. We have the shoe boxes, we can stack them. We have the shoe boxes, we can move them. We have the shoe boxes, we designed the trains, planes, trucks, automobiles to carry the shoe boxes. This simple innovation, because that's all it was, putting goods in a shoe box, was transformational in trade. And the development impact around the world has been absolutely phenomenal. So really, it's really important. So that's kind of where we are today. I think we've all been talking so much about digitalisation, and actually I love the work the DSI are doing. It's absolutely amazing. But I actually never liked the phrase digitalisation or digitization. I don't know, digitization. It sounds to me someone has a magic wand and they digitalize something, okay, and they transform it. But it's not like that. And yesterday we heard the definition of technology, the use of scientific knowledge for practical purposes. So that's what it's about, the use of scientific knowledge, people using their brain to figure out something, to do something practical. So in simple terms, I see it very simply, it's to do what we've always been doing, But we do it more efficiently, we do it more effectively, we do it in a more cost-sensitive manner, and that's what happened with the container, and I think that's what we're going to see is happening today. And again, a little bit like, and it won't be much longer, maybe another 4 minutes, and then thinking about the container shipments. Container environment is not perfect. Okay? But it has had huge positive impact. Containers get stuck. Containers get stolen. Containers fall overboard. But by and large, the system is extremely efficient. It's using a standard that was already there, a shoebox. It's just innovated into use it a bit more effectively. So that's the good story. So then I have another story, okay? And this is just a few more minutes, okay? This ship is a Evergreen Line ship. Does anyone know the name of this ship? It was stuck in the Suez Canal. Who said that? Oh, here. Ever given, never forgiven. Okay? And you have one yourself, but we'll present it later, a box of Irish handmade chocolates. Okay? But here's my little story about the ever given. Okay? Ever given, never forgiven. And I'll be about 4 more minutes. I know I said that as well, but never trust an Irishman, okay, when he has a microphone. Okay. So here's the story about the ever given, never forgiven. The ever given got stuck in the Suez Canal for 6 days. The negative impact on global trade was phenomenal. Billions were actually lost overall, with ships backed up having to go around the Horn of Africa. Now, on the ship, and I'm supposed to know about trade, this is a model of the Ever Given, okay? And containers are measured in 20-foot units, usually 20-foot, 40-foot, but measured in 20-foot units. How many 20-foot containers could this ship hold when it's full? Just guess, just pick a number, just say a number. 40,000. Wow, that's a big number. Any other number? 8,000. That's a smaller number, but that's a good number. I probably would have been guessing there. Any one final number? Wow, amazing, amazing, amazing. Spot on. This ship will hold 22,000 20-foot container units. That's absolutely incredible. And in a 20-foot container, there could be less than container loads. So there could be maybe 10 shipments covered by bills of lading in each container. Who knows? But I'm just picking round numbers. So if we 20,000 containers, because I get confused with big odd numbers, 20,000 containers, and we could have 10 LCLs, that's 200,000 shipments. That's 200,000 sets of bills of lading. Bills of lading are issued in a set of how many? 3. So we're 600,000 pieces of paper. 400,000 of them are a waste of time, a waste of space, a waste of paper, and a waste of trees. Now, I know there can be exceptions where I'm wrong, but today we're talking about things that facilitate trade in a very consistent manner. So I'm working with the Chartered Institute of Shipbrokers, and they made me a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Shipbrokers, and not because I'm a friendly guy, but because I argue with them. Because we've been arguing about this for over a year now. So something major is going to happen soon in terms of the number of original bills of lading, and they tell us it's the bankers that are the problem. I said, it's not really. I said, it's our problem collectively. So with that, we're going to hear now about something transformational in terms of trade, in terms of trade facilitation, and of course in the terms of the electronic journey, or dare I say the digital journey from paper to electronic to digital to using scientific knowledge to solve practical problems. So with that, I'm going to ask Pamela Maher, Managing Director of the Digital Standards Initiative, and Richard will join us a little bit later. But Pamela, please open up the session. It says here a keynote, but I think it's more of an interactive session led by you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Vincent. Thanks for the very specific reminder of what the impact of digitalizing trade really does. So I'm super pleased to be here today because the DSI has been working, I think, for the past like year, actually a bit more than that, 15 months, on getting through 40 key trade documents. It's actually an official list. So the WTO and the UN SCAP and UN CITRAL, which are 3 multilateral bodies which know a hell of a lot about trade, they basically made a list of 40 key trade documents which can be digitalized. And I mean, it's not like they were starting from zero. Actually, the process of digitalizing each of these individual key trade documents has been ongoing since like year 2000, possibly sooner than that, by standards bodies and multilateral bodies and so on. But when they came out with this list, we realized, okay, well, this is the key to digitalizing trade, is to get everyone thinking about the document. And it's not just a piece of paper. Actually, the document is a transaction because it lays out all the terms and conditions. And in some cases, the document is actually a title. The document has legal status, it has financial status, and so on. So the heart of digitalizing trade is actually to use the documents as the key nodes of the process, and that will eventually engage every single party on every single supply chain. And so that's why we're talking about key trade documents. It's actually, an official list. And what are documents? Documents are just data. And so our task is digitalize the document by converging the usage of standards in document, okay, so that everyone is kind of transacting on the same electronic version of the document. And then where there's multiple versions of the document, really try to converge how we treat the data inside the document. And so we did 7 documents first, and that was, I joked to someone that it was a popularity contest. We simply asked our industry advisory board, what are the 7 most commonly used trade documents? And it was pretty clear. It's like certificate of origin, invoice, warehouse receipt, and so on. And so you do not have a supply chain in the world without these 7 documents. And so we did the first work of standards analysis and recommendations, and that was published in March at our Future Trade Forum. Then we decided to be a bit more structured and say, okay, well, there's 6 types of documents left: finance and payment, transport and logistics, and so on. And let's just take 3 chunks of these, and so that made 14 documents. So that's how we came up with 7 and 14. There's no scientific formula. It was totally, we're doing this for the first time, so let's just make the right approach, or make a plausible approach. And so that's why we have this. And before, when in discussing, with Habib and Vincent, how should we launch this? I said, I really want to print it out, because even though we're digital, if I give you a QR code and I'm asking you to see it on your mobile phone, you open it up and you basically, go a little cross-eyed reading an A4 piece of paper on your phone. So that's why we have this. The full report is 40 some odd pages. So this is just the executive summary, and it just gives you something to give you a sense of what is actually in the packet. So before I start, actually, DSI is just a platform, but we are actually a platform for facilitating the work of many, many different parties. So before I begin to present to you what is in the deck, I'd like to just play a little video. Now, this video is totally unscripted. We simply went to our working group and say, please send us 10 to 20 to 25 seconds. Freedom of speech. You can say whatever you want about the process. So this is it.
Hi, I'm Gerard Hatching. I support very much the Digital Standards Initiative, because the standards we will recommend for the data used in the business processes of around 40 trade documents will benefit all the national supply chains.
The Digital Standards Initiative's efforts to harness existing standards and promote interoperability is a big step towards enabling seamless data exchange across global supply chains. This is how we make digital trade accessible, inclusive, and benefit smaller companies facing resource constraints.
Hi, I'm Henri Bartel, Project Manager for the Digital Standards Initiative Key Trade Documents and Data Elements Working Group. We are bringing together senior experts from user companies and from standard organizations to create a toolkit for digitalization without reinventing the wheel.
Hello, I am Dr. Hanan Bisha, honored to serve as the Vice Chair of the UNC Pact, overseeing the transport and logistics sector. In this capacity, I contribute to data exchange standards development along with a community of experts from public and private sector worldwide.
Hello, I am Tejo Kusuma. On behalf of the World Customs Organization, I would like to welcome the ICC Digital Standards Initiative, accelerate cross-border trade digitalization, and the implementation of international standards.
Hi, I'm Tom Shinya with Tokyo Marine. I also represented IUMI, the International Union of Marine Insurance. I firmly believe that standards are the key of our future, because without standards, the trade cannot be digitalized.
Hi, my name is Avani Gokhale, the Global Lead for Trade Strategy at SWIFT. If we want to create an ecosystem which is efficient, frictionless and transparent, we need to drive standardization, interoperability and digitization as an industry. And this is where all the fantastic work that ICC is doing on KTDDE comes into play.
Hi, I'm Daniel Cotti, a founding partner of the T3I Partner Network. I believe that standards are critical to support the digital transformation of global trade.
Hello everyone, I'm Harish Manadia, founder of Shipping and Freight Resource. I chose to be part of this transformative journey as I believe that implementing standards in trade documentation is a necessity and will level the playing field for everybody in the ecosystem. Watch this space as there is more to follow.
Hi, my name is Henk Boulder. I work for the International Air Transport Association as the head of digital cargo. We believe that the convergence of digital standards for transport and logistics are essential to enable digital trade.
Hello, my name is Ian Watt. I'm one of the vice chairs of the Bureau of the UNECE-UNCFACT. I'm accountable for the Sustainable International Supply Chain. It's been my honor to be invited to work with Digital Standards Initiative. The deliverable is going to be an accelerant of our ability to move to digitalized trade.
Hi everyone. I'm Robert Bideman, Vice Chair of the DSI Industry Advisory Board and Chief Product Officer of GS1. When we set out to take on this work to develop a shared understanding of digital trade standards, we knew we were starting something exciting. And the launch of this second report is an essential step in our common journey toward the digitalization of trade. I hope that you'll find the report valuable to your work.
Okay, so that was actually done in around 10 days. And it's a bit homemade, but we wanted to show you actually how many different parties and people are involved in the DSI process. And you'll note how many different English accents there are in there, because it's truly, it's truly a global enterprise. So with that, maybe we can just go to the presentation. And I'll share with you a bit more about what's in this report. By the way, the report is actually going to be live on our website. Actually, everything we do is on our website, and it's not paywalled or anything. So you can just go to our website. It's dsiiccwbo.org. So next slide, please. Just, here, okay. Got it. So just a bit about DSI. We are actually like a public-private partnership. So ICC is a business organization, but we receive funding from the Asian Development Bank and the government of Singapore. And we also receive a lot of technical support from the WTO and the WCO. And this is important because, it takes public sector engagement with the private sector in order to come to a common vision in order to digitalize global trade. And our goal is very clear. It is a globally interoperable, harmonized, digitalized trade environment. And we really believe that this is the only way that we're actually going to drive inclusivity and sustainability, which will help address all of our SDG challenges. We are not creating new standards. We are not a standards development organization. Rather, we take the work of standards development organizations and seek to progress it and to seek to drive industry adoption in a way that converges industry use of existing standards. So we're providing a bridge between standards developers like the ISO, UNCFACT, GS1s, and industry. Okay, and hopefully our work will simplify standards for the many entrants in trade and also the many entrants who have not been able to enter international trade because it's too complicated. And for SMEs, the complexity of what standards you use, at which point and which document, it is really overwhelming. So it's only that's why multinationals dominate global trade. I mean, 70% of global trade is actually taking place in multinational run supply chains. So that's our goal, and we want to really drive transparency and accessibility, and that means also a lot of capacity building. So over the past 2 days at BCR, we were talking about how do you drive digital trade from a finance perspective, but it's basically, you know, we boiled it down to 4 basic aspects. One is standards, obviously. We need to be talking the same language, and that enables us to share data in a way that is truly seamless and plug and play. The second is trust, and that's the whole technology piece. Is that what technologies can you use so that you trust the data coming in and so that the data that's going out can also be trusted by the counterparty. Blockchain is one solution, but we also believe that there's a lot of other solutions and there will be more that are being created. But our vision is scalable digital trust, okay? Because you can have trust between 2 parties, but the challenge is, how do you take what those 2 parties have done and then enable 3rd and 4th and 5th and 6th parties to actually trust that as well? So it's scalable digital trust in a decentralized environment. So that's the challenge. The third is the legal element. I mean, there's the model law on electronic transferable records, and there's an enabling policy environment that there is a role for government to play because what government does is shape markets. Right? And so as we seek to transform global trade, we will need a lot of proactive action from governments around the world. And then the fourth is really capacity building, in that you have to teach people how to do new things in new ways. You have to teach people new technology. And you have to enable the developing world to really drive growth in a digital first way. So we do a lot to see digitalization and so on. We work through an industry advisory board, and actually Richard Wolf, who is going to join me on stage in a while, he's a member of the IAB. Gerard, who kicked off the video, is the chair. So basically, these are industry bodies and very big players in industry whose participation in the development of standards and in the operationalization of standards is really, really critical. Because you need the big players to really come on board. And so actually getting big organizations and industry organizations on board through the IAB has not been difficult. Everyone is really united. And I think it's not often you find something where the public sector and the private sector are so well aligned. Right, our objectives are completely the same. We just have some kind of differences in how we get there. And there's also a question of speed. Business always want to move a bit faster. We want to move faster, but then, you know, we have all of these issues like capacity building and so on. So we're working these out in the IAB. And this is basically the 40 key trade documents which the IAB has decided to work on. And you'll see batch 2, it was June to October. It's basically so customs bond was sort of left over from batch 1. We have finance and payment, transport and logistics, and documents of title. And the way that we did it, we just sort of broke it down into 14 different working groups, each headed by an expert in the area. So an expert being someone who actually knows how this document is used and knows which industry bodies are concerned and so on. We've just started batch 3. So we intend to finish it all by Q1 2024. And this will be a global baseline standard for trade, for digital trade. At least that's what we hope. This is the document and data sharing map, which we released in March. So you see the 7 key trade documents, which are on the bottom row. Those little boxes at the top are each data elements which are shared between the 7 documents. The thing about supply chains is that we are reusing data again and again. So there may be a data element that appears in 4 or 5 or 6 different key trade documents. And today, and those key trade documents represent the different vertical parts of the supply chain. The reason data standards is so important is because if a data element appears in one document and another document, you want the definition, you want the taxonomy, you want the technical makeup of that data element to actually be the same. And so we've done a really good job at coordinating horizontally in the supply chain, like amongst the shippers, amongst the logistic players, to some extent amongst the buyers. But there's been very little vertical coordination so that a data element that is used by one layer of the supply chain, even if it's repeated, it may actually have different definition or different technical makeup. So we are trying to harmonize vertically what's going on or what's being shared in the supply chain so that you can actually pass data along, and so that we don't have to check and recheck to make sure the data element is correct. We can just trust it from the get-go. The second element is security. We want to verify who has the legitimate right to create that data element. Because some players are simply receiving data and using it and passing it on, but they're not the creator. You really need to know who is the source, who is the legitimate source. And then you need to secure that data, you need to verify it, using different kind of technology, and then you need to allow it to be passed on. So this data sharing map was for 7 key trade documents. To be quite honest, we've done another sharing exercise with all 21, 7 plus 14. But if we put it on a 2D map like this, it's going to give everyone a headache. So we're working with SCAP to put it online, and that online version, it's actually being created right now, so hopefully it'll be ready in December. But that is going to be a clickable kind of map where you can click on a document, see the data elements, see where it's shared, and so on. So it's actually a guide to how the supply chain works from a data perspective. What's in the batch? So I mentioned the different types of document. The thing we've done, we've analyzed each document, we've made a recommendation for how do we further harmonize the individual document. And that's recognizing that different organizations may have proposed different electronic versions, not more precise or less precise or better or worse, just different. And so there's different parties in the world using different versions of the document. But essentially, the task is we either need to harmonize or we need to go down to the data level and make sure that the data that they're talking with is actually the same. We've created a glossary of all of the kind of 150 most important data elements in the supply chain. And we've created a data sharing guide, which will hopefully go online in December. The reason you need a glossary is because everyone needs a reference on what does a data element mean and how do you use it, and who is the legitimate author, and so on. And here again, we've not made it up. It's actually, there are different glossaries existing in trade. And you'll see you see the reference standard sets on the right. These are the sources of the different definitions of trade elements and standards organizations. And then you see on the left who has actually been in charge of the analysis process. I know it's a lot of acronyms. You can just Google the acronyms. It's a kind of open source thing. And then for each trade document, you'll find an analysis where we talk about the definition, the counterparties, legal standards, prevalence of usage, like how digitalized is it? Because some documents are very digitalized in usage, like the bill of lading, okay, and that at least everyone knows how to work with it. And then some documents are actually at a very elementary stage. When we talk about the last mile, that's how do we progress the harmonization and practices for that particular key trade documents. And this last mile is super important because if you can't get industry to start talking the same language, it's very hard to share data. It requires individual bilateral configuration. And for most organizations, it's too costly to do that. They'd just rather take it by email and then copy it over. So that won't be very secure. That won't promote data sharing seamlessly end to end. The image is a glass pipeline. We want the player at any given point in the supply chain to look down the chain like it's a glass pipeline, and see everything that's going on in real time. And you want to be able to trust the data. Our mission is get us there. Okay, it's difficult, but anyways, you see, this was the example for bill of exchange and promissory note. The last mile recommendation there is actually for MLETR to enable financial organizations to begin using the bill of exchange and promissory note more frequently. That it's already harmonized, but we need to drive adoption, and adoption is based on legal protection. This is a glossary that, as it's published. No, this is the data sharing map as it's published in the report. So you have 150 data elements, the reference ID in the UN Trade Element data element directory, and then the description and so on. So you can, like if you're a bit of a data nerd, or you can give this to the data nerds in your organizations. And then I think this is going to be what's going on interactively in December. So we also have a couple recommendations, and we intend to use the recommendations to actually engage policymakers, because government does have a role to play, not necessarily in mandating the use, but in getting the government counterparties, because at very many points in the supply chain, it's actually a government counterparty, Customs Department, or it's a government compliance requirement that needs to take part in the harmonization. So we want to encourage the use of the key trade glossary. We want to encourage the use of standardized identifiers for subjects and objects. And we want to move towards decentralized trusted data exchange at scale. So scalable data, trusted data sharing. Okay, so that's a lot. I don't think, it's hard not to agree with the idea that we should all be talking the same language in order to promote data sharing, because that's how supply chains can be more efficient. The question is, what can you do with this today? It's not like, can you immediately go and use it? So I have some suggestions here. Is that I'm encouraging actually everyone to develop your own roadmap to a digital supply chain, going back to the 4 different elements. So the first is on standards, is that examine your own supply chain data. Are you using the relevant standards? And you can just go and do a side-by-side comparison. And we've done that with trade platforms. We've done that with banks. Is the data verified? Not that, the data comes from the right source, but actually, there's an idea, always never trust, always verify. Is that even though you may know your supplier for 20 years, you must verify that the number he gives you for the cartons is actually true. It must be verified at the source. So is the data that you're getting verified? Are you collaborating with your supply chain partners on digitalization? So that very often we hear, well, why aren't you doing anything on digitalization? Well, I'm waiting for my customer to tell me what to do. The thing is, begin the conversation. Is that you really need to do it with your incoming and outgoing, because that's the data chain. And then are you using digital identity and relevant identifiers? And that digital identity is an immutable, incontrovertible way to secure the identity of your counterparty. If you're not using this, then maybe you should look into how you can start using digital identity, because it's like an anchor of all the data in your supply chain. The second is trust. And basically for any supply chain trade platform, are you evaluating them on their ability to trust, your ability to trust their data? And it doesn't mean that simply being a member of this trade platform is good enough. Often you need to go to the level of data. Legal, it's a difficult one, because every government is unique. Every national circumstance is unique. And so, but we need business to really advocate to their individual governments that MLETR and legalization of electronic records in trade is absolutely the baseline condition for getting business to move. And the thing is, governments, we know that the G20 has said this, the G7 has come out in favor of, data free flow with trust. It's in ASEAN, it's in APEC. Everyone, at the multilateral level, there's a lot of awareness about MLETR. But national governments, at least what we've learned, they really need to hear it from their own private sector. They need to hear it from you that, that MLETR, passing MLETR is really important for your business transformation, and that it will make it very, that's the case for government. There's also a degree of education in that MLETR is a bit, it may be perceived as a bit technical, a bit arcane, but it is really the kind of the gate that needs to be lifted in order to digitalize trade. And then the last one is build capacity. You don't just trying to engage in digital transformation doesn't mean you need to have to go and hire a digital army. It's actually your own people. You can educate them up. You can bring them along. And this, I come from the world of supply chains. This is true whether you're in a factory or a trading business or a financial business. There are principles of digital trade that are totally accessible to your own employees. And so we've actually developed an online course. It's 5 hours. It's basically Digital Trade 101. And so we encourage everyone get knowledgeable about what the terms are. Just rounding out the other part of what we do, that we have a legal reform advisory board, which is advocating, for MLETR passage, basically using the ICC network. We have a MLETR toolkit. So it's basically, if you want to pitch to your governments or industry organizations, you can basically, use our toolkits like case studies, PowerPoint, what is MLETR. We have a tracker, which it's an 8-stage journey for nations to come on to MLETR. And it's basically, MLETR is a model law, but the changes that take place have to be done nationally because it's all about aligning the national legal frameworks to allow ETRs. You'll see that there's, so Abu Dhabi Global Market has signed on, and basically we're hoping that more and more countries realize that it's totally possible. UK was the last one in September by passing the Electronic Trade Documents Act. But there's a couple other countries which are coming on strong. Basically, the G7, over half of the G7 are already, on their way. So, basically, I'm asking you kind of if you can think about how your own government can get on the pathway to allowing you to digitalize at a faster pace. This is the Certificate in Digital Trade Strategy. This is the online course. And it's basically, it's just like an introduction to digital trade. It's $500 US, but recently we've been doing a lot of bulk sales, and so obviously it can be cheaper than that. But the good thing about this is that actually the teachers are industry experts. And so they're the people who actually know their stuff inside and out, and there's 20 of them. So 5 hours, 20 people, so each person only has a very short segment, so it's kind of entertaining to see everyone. And the last one is if you're looking for a platform, and this goes back to what Vincent was talking about EBLs. If you're looking for a platform to engage in digital trade, you can consider the FIT Alliance EBL declaration. The FIT Alliance is comprised of ICC, SWIFT, FIATA, which is a freight forwarding organization, DCSA, which is Digital Container Shipping Alliance, and BIMCO, which is another shipping organization. And basically, these organizations that you see on the right have, confirmed that they're going to start moving towards universal EBLs. So no more paper at the shipping, in the shipping process. Even if you're not a shipper, you can commit to the EBL declaration because the EBL contains so much essential information about the supply chain that I'm sure if you're running a supply chain, you're using data from the EBL. So it's basically a commitment to start using digital formats of that data. So if you're a bank, you can do this. If you're a trader, you can do this. You don't have to be involved in shipping and logistics. And I think that's it. So, we encourage you to download the report and to start using it, start, referring to digital standards. I think before we move to questions, I'd like to call up Richard to the stage. Richard is the executive director of the ICISA, which is Credit Assurance and Surety Association, International Credit Insurance Assured. And Richard is on our industry advisory board, and I'd just like to kind of ask you a couple questions where you share your experience. First, why are you involved in DSI? And, what does digital trade have to do with ICISA?
So thank you to Pam. Is this working?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. That's basically a question that answers itself. So the International Credit Insurance and Surety Association is exactly what it says on the tin. We do credit insurance and we do surety. And if you talk about credit insurance and surety, you're talking about international trade. Anything that furthers international trade is good for our associations and more so for our members. So when Gerard Hartzink called me and said, do you want to be a part of the International Advisory Board? The answer was a natural yes. Does that answer your question?
Okay, and what's your view of the role of KT-DDE process in trade digitalization?
I think it's got a gigantic role to play, and I think you just worded it very, very well. Not only the standardization, but the promotion of the use of standards and the structuring of those standards so that people can use them every day will do a couple of things. First, I think it will promote international trade by making it a little bit easier, by having people speaking the same language. I don't know how much. I've got problems quantifying how much additional international trade will be done by that, but it seems quite logical that there will be more. What probably is easier to quantify is that if all of us speak the same language, if all of us communicate in a much frictionless way, we are able to save a lot of cost. Now, I don't have to tell you how much frictional cost there is in our system. Let's take a very simple example, a bill of lading. We all know what it looks like, we can communicate the thing, and if you send it as a seller to your buyer, you have to use DHL because otherwise the ship arrives before the bill of lading does, and you'll be paying demurrage, and then DHL loses the thing, or you just need to pay DHL. That cost is practically eliminated at the point where these documents are electronically transferable. And more than that, we're talking about a single source of truth. In my industry, we have a lot of, let's call them issues, with forged bills of lading, with duplicate bills of lading, which are actually being accepted by financiers, and then later it turns out goods weren't there. If we use this language on a verifiable basis, you basically cut out all this cost as well. So again, when we were asked, should this be a part of what ICISA does, the answer was a natural yes. If it's good for the community, if it's good for my members, the answer has to be yes. What else did I put down? Pam did communicate these questions to me in advance. Everything is pre-cooked, you must know. So I took down a couple of answers, and one of them is if you build your standards, and better still, if you build a platform which you expect everyone to use, nobody's going to use it. I think one of the attractions of this initiative is it creates a way to use existing standards on your own systems. Now, if you talk to a bank and you say to that bank, "Dear Mr. HSBC, we want you to adopt a new system," the first thing you'll get is a smile. And that smile will basically tell you, boy, are you naive? If you want us to adopt a new system, you're going to have to go through this whole process. It'll be expensive. It will be time consuming. None of this requires your own system. And that's the beauty of it. So thanks for that, Pam, because I think you were one of the people who dreamt this up.
Thank you. Can you share how some of your members are using, these lessons?
Yeah, and it's a lesson of digitization, I guess. So what my first and foremost credit insurance members started to do about 15 years ago is digitize their process of delivery. So very much an internal digitization, which I guess set the scene to make this wider, to start communicating, and that whole digitization of the process has basically been done. The second step is now, how do you communicate? How do you deliver your product? How do you make your product speedier, more reliable, cheaper to handle? And that is something which my industry has been engaged with for the last, say, 5 years. Now, the third step is when we need to pay out, because that's what you ultimately buy insurance for, right? If something happens, you expect the money. That process needs to be quick, and that process needs to be verified. So what does a typical credit insurer need when before he decides to pay out? He needs the invoice. He needs the bill of lading. He needs a couple of other things which are all part of the data elements. If those are available and you've used them in your whole process, this is going to be used in claims payment, and that will speed up claims payment from the roughly 21 to 30 days we need now to almost instantaneously. Good for the market, good for the product, good for everyone. And that's only one of the tiny uses of this project. And I'm sure if we put our minds together, we can think of thousands of them, because everyone in this room uses the data elements which the DSI has defined and would like us to use, and we should use them.
Okay, thank you. Any other advice other than please use it? Any advice like on how to approach digitalization, or how to even talk to your insurance or financial provider about this?
I think the advice should be, we have all grown slightly cynical about standard systems, etc. Lose it on this one. Cynicism is not going to help us. Cynicism prohibits use, and we cannot use it. On your credit insurance, surety, you've seen that customs bonds is one of the documents in this second batch. You know what customs bonds are, right? I see a couple of nods. I see a whole lot of blank stares. Okay, let me do this. A customs bond is basically a document where a third party, one of my members, says to the customs authorities of Holland, my native Holland, that if these goods are imported, the seller or the buyer, as the case might be, doesn't have to pay the duty straight away, and there is somebody guaranteeing that you will get your money. Okay? Why am I saying this? This is a notable trade document which needs to be used. is used differently in all kinds of different countries. No two customs bonds are alike of different countries. So it might also push the customs authorities in countries as wide apart as Argentina, Australia, and Norway to harmonize this so that international trade becomes a little bit more frictionless. That's a big piece of advice. I don't expect anyone to listen within the next couple of days, but we need to get this process started.
Okay, thank you. So now we actually have 5 minutes left for if you have any questions for either me or Richard. Stay there.
Any questions? Yes, please.
Thank you. Hi, good afternoon. My name is Hani Garg and I work with SWIFT. We've been partners on this initiative since 2018 when it started on 24th May in London in a very different avatar. So glad to see where it has come. The question is, in a typical bank back office or a corporate trade team, how do you see this being used for day-to-day operations, interaction with the banks, interaction with counterparties, interaction with the insurance or the ports, etc. So this is basically setting a standard right now, defining, everybody using the same language. But today, the fragmentation which is there in terms of the back office systems, practices, laws, you mentioned those 4 blocks. So how do you see the users being able to use this effectively? Because those things will take very long time to fix. So this kind of is maybe a bit ahead of the rest of the curve.
Okay, so I have to be very honest, which is that I realize that for many larger banks, actually their process is already very digital in that they get data via API from their borrowers. And so for them, and then they process it within their own kind of ERP or transaction system. And so the question is, well, like my system's already digital, so what's the problem? And here I would have 2 pieces of two asks. The first is recognize that the process before it gets to the bank submission portal is actually very not digital, and it's very not standardized, and it's very cumbersome. And so if we want to enlarge the market of borrowers, we have to actually simplify that process a lot, which means that, from a standards perspective, if you're asking your borrowers to hew to banks' individual standards, that means that for every different lender that they're dealing with, it becomes quite cumbersome, which means that basically they may be trapped. And so that's, I said I was from supply chain background. I used to work for a big trading company and with factories all over the emerging markets. And when we talk to suppliers, they say basically, well, I only have one bank. I have to do everything according to that one bank. It's like no choice. And when I say, well, can you go to another bank? Can't get through the KYC AML process. Okay, so that's the reality. And so, big banks have the power to actually change that reality. And it starts with, one, harmonizing how you're accepting data, 2, harmonizing how you're accepting documents. And that means understanding, are the things coming into your system globally interoperable? Because if they're not, that means, you've just made your market share possibly smaller because you're limiting the pool of potential borrowers. Now, I know that's a very theoretical answer. And so what do you do tomorrow? Find the delta between the standards that you're using and that your process that you're using and the globally interoperable standard. That's why we create the standards baseline, is so that players who are already in the market can know the delta, and then it's their choice whether they want to move to try to transition. And we're actually going to try to help with that, in that, we know the benefit which is everyone can borrow more. But we need to help understand what is it going to take for banks to transition their operation, because there's so much like interlinked with that, like risk and regulatory and, you know, all this process, and that requires movement. So we're going to try to quantify that. The other suggestion for banks in particular is that for parts of your system that you haven't built yet, build them according to globally interoperable standards, because that will help help your borrowers not have to go through so much administrative burden. Anything to add?
Yeah, if I can add one thing, there is nothing to focus the mind better than self-interest. If you set a standard, it is easier to teach that standard, easier than to teach the standard of 50 different banks. Now, we're paying a lot of attention to SMEs at the moment. And one of the major problems with SMEs and getting them to actually go to their bank to get finance is because they don't understand it. If you've got this one standard, you can teach the one standard, you can go to the bank and tell the bank, I need financing, this is my operation, this is the set of information I have for you, that's what I learned, right? Those are the standards, can you finance me? Yes, no. You would expand your market.
Hi, my name is Mohammed Dawood. I am from Moody's and specialize in anti-money laundering, anti-direct financing, KYC, and all these processes. You know, after implementing this type of regulation and policy to track the movement of fund, the biggest, emphasizes and push are in the supplier and the cross-border, because the terrorist now is not anymore using the financial system to send money. He can send the goods and the component. So there will be a very big emphasis on this. And I think, and I'm having a background in banking and finance, so I would say that this digital standard initiative is also the standardization of the digitalization. Because as you highlighted, a bank might have digitalization, but it's different from the other bank digitalization. So this is very important. So I think this type of initiative will facilitate and make a lot of transparency in the way we are looking to the data to track it, at least to make sure that it is in compliance. So my question to you is this aspect has been in part of the initiative, which is how to make this compliance, QYC, QYB, QYX between the suppliers and everything to streamline this type of problem? Because you know that we have the corporate and the banks already having a problem where one bank is asking this for QYC and the other bank is asking this, even if they are under the same umbrella of regulator. My question is this has been part of the initiative?
I would like to say yes, but for the foreseeable future, we're focusing on the basics, which are, you know, the 4 standards, trust, legal, and capacity building, because we've got to bring everyone to there's so much to do in digitalizing trade, and the tasks are infinite, and so we need to really focus on getting the pillars correct. So, I mean...
But it is a side product.
By default, my opinion, it's going to be very easy to streamline some of the QIC and QIS and the regulation that
I think what you might be talking about is a side product of the exercise as Pam showed. So Pam showed the legal entity identifier published by Glaive. Now, the LEI could be used very, very easily, or is used on all trade documents. You know who the buyer is, you know who the seller is. If they both have a lei, it is very easy to identify them, and it is a lot easier to do your KYC AML. So it's a side product. It hasn't been constructed with this in mind, but it could serve your purposes as well.
Yes, it's working. Hey, this is Ahmed Baniani from Arab Africa International Bank. Actually, it's music to our ears knowing that standardization will simplify trade people, especially from a banking perspective, actually side. But my question that once we say it's globalized, then things need to be considered all part of the world. So including the issues that we are seeing in the emerging markets with a lot of regulation, restrictions, guidance happening at the emerging markets. So mainly I have two different questions at the same, or mainly I want to know if you address both challenges. First, I've seen that there is a lot of development banks had participated in the initiative itself. And my first question would be is how the new standards are taking in consideration the different emerging needs and rules and regulation in those emerging markets that till date still adapting to the previous standards. So especially at some developing markets. So and now we are coming with a new update to them. And the second question is for those transformation, which transformation comes with a cost, as you know. What's the role of the multilaterals and global organization and those ones who had put in actually the standards themselves to those markets to implement the new standards? Because it will cost a lot to those guys. And my second actually question would be a bit related. We have talked a lot about the SME side, which definitely standardization would help the SMEs segment to be bankable, which as a Egyptian bank or a bank with a head office in Egypt, actually we had paid a lot for financial inclusion. So still we are talking about getting people to banks before banking them into trade. So my second question is going through new digitalized standard, even for logistics, for shipping, for smaller fronters, insurance companies, getting a new digitalized era or trade flows, or getting 80%, for example, of the trade flows into a new system, how much that would cost them and will get them in or out of the market versus the larger competitors? And same question, who's paying the cost of including them again into the cycle? Thank you.
Go first.
I go first? Okay, a lot of questions. How is this going to be implemented in emerging markets? I think the only answer I can give is slowly. This is not going to happen overnight. Some of us in the room were present at a conference of the FCI in Marrakesh last week. We talked about the model law on factoring, which has a lot to do with financial inclusion, less with the standards. What you see is that it's implemented country by country by country after a lot of advocacy. And I fear that is exactly what's going to happen here. On your question, how many people is it going to push out of the market? Because it'll be costly. Yeah, it'll probably cost money. It'll probably deliver some money as well because you cut out the frictional cost. So that's a question of weighing up. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, largely.
Largely.
Yeah. Just to go back to the emerging markets question, actually, our experience in working with the emerging markets is that I'm actually very hopeful because many haven't started their journey yet. So they've yet to make the decisions about standards. They're basically learning the case from the developed countries. And it's no surprise that the countries which have already aligned to MLETR, they're relatively more well-off countries, G7 and so on. We have strong interest from the middle-income countries, but the key issue is capacity. So the front line don't know how to do digital first, right? They're still in like year 2000 doing a lot of with paper and so on. So we are actually building a lot of capacity. We are doing capacity building with like China, Georgia, Cambodia. We're starting initiative. I think also we have deep links within the ASEAN region and also within Latin America. So, you know, we actively seek to engage with governments to help them build that capacity because we get it. There's never anyone who's against digitalization. Like, why would you be against it? Okay, it has only benefits, but there's huge capacity gaps. So that's why the public and private sector need to work together in order to bridge that. And that's why on our legal reform advisory board, you'll see EBRD, you know, the African Exim Bank and so on. So, I mean, I'm happy to hear from any of you. If you have governments which are interested, you know, what we need is a champion within government. Who's really going to take, you know, who's really going to champion this forward? And then just the will to really make it happen. Doesn't happen without those two things. So.
Any other question? One final question. Wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm Nizaruddin. During the COVID, we saw an acceleration of digitization because of the courier issues and all those stuff. I've written many articles on those issues on DCW as well. But unfortunately, we don't see any improvement on digitization. Now, if you see e-bill of lading, many things were spoken about it. It's been expedited and, you know, accelerated. I see UK has come up with some particular solution. But unfortunately, if you see the data, 99% of the bills of lading issued today, as of today, are paper-based. Only 1% is issued. This is from the ADB data, ADB report. Okay, so only 1% is issued on electronically. Out of the 1% that is issued, also all these bills of lading were issued physically on paper to clear the goods, including in UK. Okay, so there's a big disconnect. So there is no one who has led this digitization in proper manner. There's, you know, I'm not blaming anybody, but I don't know, the world does not have the specialization or the knowledge to lead this. Somebody has to come forward and lead this particular thing. So I think, when we implemented SWIFT, okay, the world embraced it because we compelled them to adapt to the SWIFT, okay? So we didn't go and do like this sort of initiations and all those stuff. But gradually the banks and worldwide, the SWIFT was popular. I think you have to have the same approach. Somebody has to come forward. I had been trying to speak to many people, but nobody's there to who will listen. So, you know, you have to change the approach if you want to digitize this. This is my opinion.
If I may add, Pam, I think the approach has changed, and I think it has changed here and now. It's how we actually go forward. So the methodology is there. It's how we actually scale all of this, and we get to accelerate it. And of course, that brings us to the Global Trade Facilitation Summit in Dubai in the week of the 29th of April in Dubai Chamber. It's no joke. We have the World Bank, we have the IFC, we have the ADB, we have the ITFC, we have the Inter-American Development Bank. They're all here along with you. So this will be another step on this journey. Today is a huge step, but I think now we will be able to take bigger steps and a little bit faster. So I think, any final question? Did I miss any?
Can I say one thing to the gentleman? Anything you do in implementing this has to be anchored in law. And I think we took a gigantic step, or the Brits took a gigantic step, by adopting the Electronic Trade Document Act. The fact that now 1% of bills of lading has only been issued electronically, yeah, I get that, because the law anchor wasn't there. A lot of international trade is done under common law, and the ETDA would govern that. So what I would say is, hold your breath. Coming soon to this theater, I think it is growing, and I think it'll grow with every country who will adopt some version of MLETR. I might be an optimist.
I just wanted to respond to the previous question. I think it's actually 2%, not 1% of EBLs, but that's minor. I think people are doing something about it. I think that's what DSI is doing. They're trying to get together and solve the problem. They're bringing together industry, governments, Pan-African development banks. So there is a lot of work going in to solve this. You know, there's companies like Anisio, CargoX, iStocks. Again, MLETR is going to drive adoption in that space, but it's not going to happen overnight. To go from 2% to 25 to 30 is not going to happen in 6 months, but progress is being made. And if you don't put the effort in, nothing's going to happen.
Nizar, thank you for mentioning that. You know, unless SWIFT makes things mandatory, nothing ever happens. Okay, I'll give you the current example. So we are in payments world, which is way ahead of trade in digitization, right? 99% of payments are initiated digitally nowadays. We are moving from the existing standard to ISO 20022. Similar story, we want to have the same language, everybody speaks the same language across the payment networks, domestic, international. So we started the journey in March this year, and we gave people 3 years coexistence period. So you can continue to use your MT103 and the ISO message in parallel. Now, since everybody knows this will be allowed till 2025, except the top 5 banks globally, nobody has really gone ahead and done it. So now we are making it mandatory, saying you have only 1 year to go live if you have a certain threshold and above. And we see a flurry of activity happening in that regard. So one day the same will happen, but again, legal structures and the 4 boxes first and the 5th box of adoption.
So we agree we're there. We agree we're started. We agree we're at a very low level. So the next question is, how do we move forward? And our next session is going to be talking to 2 experts who some of you have mentioned actually already today and yesterday regarding the how. And this is a hybrid event, so this is the physical part, I hope. And this is the physical part, so now we will have virtual. Is that okay, Pam? We move on? Yeah?
Yeah, let's do it. Actually,
Okay.
I have a request for the audience. Can we take a Wi-Fi? So if you have this in your hand, hold this up. And if you didn't get one, then just hold your thumbs up. And I'm gonna, let's see, should I stand here? Okay, so, let me see. Okay, all right, 1, 2, 3, thank you. All right.
There is now a digital record of all of you, okay, on this platform. Okay, wonderful. Right. So we're going to continue to the rest of the program, and I would say about 45 minutes will do it. The next two sessions, the first one is actually virtual. So I should have 2 guests appearing, Habib, on screen any second now. So I should have Gunnar Collin from Inigio, which we've heard about, and Joel Shrevens from China Systems, the Solutions Director of China Systems. So I will be engaging with them on how, what, and what can actually be achieved. And then we're going to have a physical panel where we will have the practitioner, we will have the lawyer, and we've the fintech trade banker on the stage after this session. But maybe I'll commence. I can see Joel looks larger than life, and Gunnar is here at the top. So Gunnar, are you there?
Yes, I am.
No, that's Joel. Hey, Gunnar, are you here?
Yes, I'm here. I just realized I had the wrong background, so I need to change it. Sorry about that.
Okay, that's okay. That's okay. We're interested in you, not your background. Okay, so let's start, Gunnar. I think with you, if you don't mind, and we're going to kick off regarding the big question. Okay, right now we're moving paper documents around. And there's all the concerns about authenticity, originality, and of course, signing of these documents. So when we come to Inigio, and we're going to apply the ICC DSI initiative and the key trade documents. You know, someone can send me a PDF right now. Someone could send me a PDF that looks like a bill of exchange right now. Someone can send me a PDF that looks like a guarantee or a standby letter of credit right now, but they're not going to facilitate anything. So just to give it a context, and we're talking a lot about supply chain and trade finance, how can you, Inigio, send me a digital document, whether that's a PDF or whatever? How can you send it to me and I know I have that original guarantee, original standby, original promissory note, and I'm not in any closed system? So you're just sending it to me from outside the system or outside a club. Could you answer that question, please?
Yes, first of all, I have some technical problems. I hope you can hear me.
Can hear you.
Yes, so very good. So I'll get that sorted in a minute. So very sorry about that. And I would like to say I would really have wanted to be in Pamela's selfie. I'm really not happy. I'm not present physically with you all. So first of all, my first point is really around our solution and talking about standards. I think that the main standard and the best standard that we all know is the paper, right? So the paper is a very good standard. Everyone knows what it is. Everyone knows how to manage a piece of paper. So actually what we have created is a solution whereby you can have a standard in the digital world. Sorry, wrong again. I'm very sorry about this.
We can hear you and see you. You're looking good. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So really, it's all about making sure that you can work in the digital space with a lookalike paper, right? So you know that you own it and you know that you can send it around. So basically, our solution is you can take a PDF, you can turn this PDF into a singular original, and you can share it with anyone. So if I send you a document, what you will get, Vin, is basically a PDF, an enhanced PDF. So you will be able to read it, you will be able to recognize it, and you will also be able to take control. And the way we solve the problem around control is that with each of these original PDFs, there is a private key that goes together with this document. So you will have the latest version of the document and you will have a private key, and thereby you control and possess this particular document. This also makes it possible for you to transfer possession to anyone else. And you can do that without any cost, without any sharing any data, without having to be onboarded onto a platform or anything like that. So it's a very light touch. It's a very paper-like solution, and the key thing is basically there were discussions around sort of how to make this sort of affordable and not making everyone having to buy systems or change processes. So basically, our solution works on the basis of an enhanced PDF together with a password and a private key.
Okay, I like that, Gunnar, because that means it's evolution and not revolution. I'm used to we're reading guarantees, standbys. I'm used to dealing with paper promissory notes. So what I'm going to get is something I'm familiar with. But with your technology, I don't need to be in a platform, but I know it is an original. And of course, if the underlying law recognizes that as original and recognizes that I may transfer the interest in that to someone else, well, that opens up the capacity for trade to a huge level. But to do that, I need to be able to manage this. I'm thinking of an individual guarantee, an individual standby. But Joel, then turning to you, with the Inigio's technology and with their solution and their Trace Original, how can you leverage this to actually bring big benefits to the business case or to the business community?
Okay, thanks, Finn. And first of all, thank you for being invited to this inspiring event. We started our journey with Inigio, I think, in 2019. And we have always been driven by the functional equivalence criteria set forward by MLETR. Because trade is a conservative world, so for us, being able to work with a technology which is not radically changing processes was quite important. So We wanted to pick a technology where, in fact, you can still use the platforms that are in place. It's not, the trade business is not going to be run by one platform. Yeah. So not avoiding the need for everyone to be on board onto the same platform was for us a criteria. The second one, and that's related to what the SI is doing, we wanted to pick a technology that would provide us with a digital container in which we would be able to put any standard, whether it's a purchase order, invoice, UBL, a Universal Business Language format, or whether it's ISO 20022, where it's EDI, it should not matter, because we live in a very diverse world in standards. So it had to provide an open container to be able to evolve with the standards. The other thing is also, and that is important from a business point of view, we wanted to use a technology that is non-invasive from a business process point of view. So it should allow us and other trade services providers still to orchestrate the flows. So Enigio is providing a very simple solution. It's providing a combination of a digital container and a digital notary, because what they offer, of course, is more than a PDF. As Gunnar already explained it, the real value is actually in the fingerprint that sits inside the PDF. So it combines a visual image that can be used for business users, but inside you also have a fingerprint containing the unique information of the document, which will evidence originality, authenticity, data integrity, and ownership. So these are all the keys which you require to be compliant with functional equivalence criteria. And the last and probably all overriding requirement that we would have for our end users is that we have to be able to implement the technology in a fully transparent way. Whether a document goes to a physical printer on a piece of paper, or whether the document is being generated and exchanged digitally, it should not matter. The user can use one and the same solution to achieve this requirement.
Okay, so standards, trust, legal and capacity, and there was a line there, never trust, always verify. So Gunnar, that sounds like you can send, it will be an individual document, it will be authenticated. Borrowing your words, Joel, let's say to imagine it's in a container. So I'm visualizing one document, but Gunnar, getting back to you, a quick question. Can this actually be done at scale? You know, you could do a demo, you can show this, but can it do it at scale? Because if it's not going to be able to be done at scale, the benefits are not going to come through that we're expecting.
Yes, of course it can be done at scale, and this is what technology can do, right? So we've seen that in many instances. And again, coming back to our solution that is sort of centered around the document. So if you look at sort of how much data you need sort of for a PDF, that's very limited. So this can definitely be done at scale.
And getting back to my story on the container and the shoebox, it's such a simple idea, but cracking this nut, I think, is transformational in trade. And Joel, getting back to you regarding this event, as you said here, which is a very important event, how can you see, how do you see the ICC DSI Key Trade Documents Initiative being facilitated, or this process being facilitated?
Yeah, that's of course the key thing, and I always try to apply a practical view on what work is being done. So what we like about ICC DSI initiative, it is taking a holistic approach across the financial and physical supply chain. Those 40 documents span different services, but ultimately it's about a customer's business who is producing things, buying and selling things. And to achieve that, he sources services from the financial world, from the logistics world, from the insurance world, from the certification world, credit insurance, etc. These are all services. And as has been said already multiple times, in order to be able to interact with all those services, you need to speak a common language, regardless what service is being used. So to do that, and I wrote many articles about this, you need a common core trade data set across all the key documents. Yes, there are different standards. So it's important to know what are the commonalities, but we also have to know what are the differences. Because if we have an understanding across the different service providers, I always like to make a comparison with the travel industry. we can start code sharing our services by applying not a common luggage policy, but applying common data policies. Yeah? That will allow us to create an integrated end-to-end journey for the ultimate end users of the trade business across the different service segments. It will allow us to close the loop between trade origination, the actual, the financing activities, all the logistics activities, and also the reconciliation activities. And there is one other important dimension which is very important to this work. Standards create predictability. And this predictability is very important because something that worries me, having worked in trade, is increased regulation means increased procedures, increased compliance activities, increased efforts on reconciliation. By making data predictable, we can also avoid the bottlenecks that we're running the risk with increased regulations. So that's a key important element as well.
Very good, actually. Just before we started, one of my colleagues asked me how we selected the two technology companies that were going to actually present with so many people interested in this area. And the answer was these were the winners, Enigio and China Systems, joint winners of the Trade Tech Transformation Challenge in GTFS 2023 coming up in 2024. And they won on the grounds of being the most practical, giving a solution. So I'm going to ask you a very short question before I do, but so right now, if we wanted, you could, not right now here, but right now you can show us the technology working, and it's not like something you're convening. You can actually, for example, taking the guarantee, customer to bank, issue by paper, customer to bank, digitally issue by SWIFT, customer to bank, and now you can digitally issue digital guarantee directly to the beneficiary. And Gunnar, you can answer that question first, if you don't mind.
Yes, I can do, and the answer is yes.
100%. Okay.
100%.
Okay. Okay. Well then,
yes.
And I think Joel is about to say yes as well. But Joel, just to wrap it up, I know you are very much in favour of the work of ICC DSI and the trade documents, and you know you've written articles about it. But if you had to pick one key benefit of this initiative with the key standard trade documents and data set, what would that? How would you describe that?
I will end that with my final statement. But since SWIFT is in the room, I'd like to make one important comment still, which is, I think, very relevant, because I met SWIFT in La Houppe last week and we talked about ICC DSI. And if I would like to give one example where the community can make an improvement, is there is a breakdown. The chain is broken. For me, I've been doing SWIFT standards for 32 years. You know, if we follow the primary data principle that ICC DSI put forward, instead of putting unstructured goods descriptions into SWIFT messages, I would like to say, let's look at the primary data source, which is the trade agreement. So instead of inside a SWIFT parsing data in an unstructured way, let's use a purchase order attachment in a structured format and indicate this is the primary data source, because an LC is actually nothing more than a purchase order and a set of purchase orders wrapped into a group of instructions. And now to really comply with your request, my last final statement on ICC DSI, I think, and why I'm so enthusiastic about this, ICC DSI, I really believe, you know, they have a very symbiotic relationship with MLETR. And as such, they are building a bridge between the paper and the digital world across physical and financial supply chains. And I'll end with that one.
That's it, building bridges. And actually, that was a very interesting comment, that the letter of credit is really only a purchase order with a bank undertaking attached. And that's really it. It's importer, exporter, goods description, amount, key documents, and a bank undertaking attached to it. Yeah, very clever. Very, very, very nice. Well, gentlemen, thank you for your time. We're going to move on to the next panel. Could we give them a round of applause? The technology worked. Great to have you here. Great. And now we come to the last session. That's the virtual one. And I guess we can let them go in a moment. And we're going to move on with our practical section here. And we're going to have Vishnu, if Vishnu is here. Vishnu Prohit, Group Head Trade Product Management, Emirates in BD. I saw Vishnu here a few minutes ago, but I just don't see him right now. Maybe he slipped out for a call. Is he here? And then getting back to the legal, Hafid Thani, Managing Partner, MNCO Legal, lawyers, please take a seat, maybe here in the middle. And Ian Mill, Group Head of Sales a month ago, please take a seat as well. Come over here beside me, Happy. I like you to go beside me. Yeah. You sit here, yeah. No, you come here, You know, I want you over there. Yeah.
Far away.
Yeah, far away. Yeah.
There's a reason for this.
Well, Vishnu isn't just here right now. I saw him a moment ago, but I'm going to proceed because we can just change the order of play a little. Oh, here he is. Yeah. Great. So what we have done is we've heard about the initiative of ICC regarding the key trade documents and data elements. We had an explanation of how it's going to actually be implemented and some of the key steps for implementation. Then we heard from industry players showing us how it can work, and I think they even convinced us it can be done at scale. It remains to be seen. But everyone has made the comment. Everyone has made the comment that we need legal law underpinning this development. I think that's, of course, it's always good to have law, no disagreement. But I would debate that a little bit myself, okay? But I'm with it. But I think there's room to maneuver. But now we're going to start with the law, okay? And we're going to start with Hafid Thani, Managing Partner at M&Co Legal Lawyers. So, you've been here, you've heard the whole proceedings. How did you find it?
Really, really, really interesting.
Okay.
Because I think now a lot of the things coming to make sense. And I understand now the need to as a UAE, to repeal the 2006 law to the new law of electronic law. It's now make a lot of sense. Because absolutely, we cannot engage in the world trade and electronic areas, especially the digitization of the and transformation of goods and services, without really having a law that is applicable to be used, and also it can adopt the standards that is already been there. So I believe as a UAE, because we are also a re-exporting market, and this is what exactly the logistic part of it that we play. And hear the stories today and what exactly has been developed. Absolutely, it's a thrill story.
Okay, so getting to the actual law number 46 in the UAE, which was implemented in 2021. If you read that law and studying the law, you can see that it clearly recognizes electronic signatures. It clearly recognizes electronic documents. It also recognizes electronic documents and records, recognizes electronic transactions, and it gives some guidance on storage of data, okay? So my question is, everyone's talking MLETR, okay? But at basic level, it looks like that law is probably enough, okay? Because it recognizes the functional equivalent of an electronic record to the paper document. So we've a paper invoice, electronic invoice, but that's the easy one. Then we have a paper bill of lading. We could also have a functional equivalent bill of lading, okay? And then promissory note, bill of exchange. So the law is good, but is it good enough what we're trying to achieve in global trade? Or rephrase the question if it's not politically correct, okay?
I just want to be politically correct in this. Okay. Because the previous law, let's say, what exactly the e-signature, for example, okay? So we stand a long time since 2006 until 2021, we really don't know what exactly that means. Okay. Is me scanning a document and signing it and send it to you in email considered to be that electronic signature, or the private key with a public key that banks use considered to be electronic signature that will be allowed, or so forth and so forth. So all of these areas were really absolutely in a very vague, in a very different areas. But when we see this particular new law, identify what exactly the mechanism and which authorities that will be allowed to come up with the standards in what exactly considered to be e-signature, for example, or e-document in a base of it. So I think we moved from that. So it become now more inviting to the international trade and to be identified and to use a digital means that absolutely protected under the law and could be easily identified by the users as well.
Okay, I'll come back to that again regarding cross-border trade. But what's interesting in the law, the new law actually, there was an exclusion on the previous law on negotiable documents, okay? So that means the previous law just wouldn't work, wouldn't support international trade finance. But that's gone, so it's pretty convincing. But now let's go to the practitioner, Vishnu, at the end of the table. So first of all, we'll start with the MLETR, and then we'll talk about the business case for ICC DSI. I've heard you at conferences, you're very passionate about the MLETR in context of international business. So what's your core, why? Why do you feel so strongly about it?
Well, that's an interesting one. The fact that that's a question that needs to be answered itself is interesting.
Yeah.
There are various benefits that I see why MLETR should be promoted in all geographies possibly. Apart from really getting to see that can trade be an instant transaction at some point of time, which can only be achieved if we have digitization in place.
Okay.
And for digitization, I think we really need solutions like MLETR because we don't want to have solutions which are disruptive. A lot has been spoken about that already, that the technology should not be invasive. The technology should be something which allows the transaction to happen the way transactions can happen today. So, for example, if I have a paper document today, I don't have to sort of define that it can only be an A4 paper or a certain specific GSM type of paper.
Yep.
So solutions have to be such that it can be adopted at scale. I think that's a continuous theme which is going on. For that, MLETR-like solution is the only way to go about it.
I guess for cross-border trade in particular.
For cross-border trade,
okay.
Perfect, yeah.
Okay.
So that's the only way to go about it, and that coupled with ICC DSI, I think it makes for a very phenomenal combination of how can trade be digitally native, interoperable, and embedded.
Yeah.
But the overarching reason why we need digitization and why MLETR is important is that's the only way I possibly see that you can really cut down on the trade finance gap. There is no other way. Why I say that is the amount of trust which is put in documents today is linked to who are the counterparties being involved. The moment you have a digital document which could be verified with the use of digital identity solutions, there is no real difference between a small customer SME or a large corporate. You have a bill of lading which is issued by, let's say, MSC or a Maersk, and you can instantly verify it. It just simply takes away the flavor of a differentiation between a large company versus a small company.
Okay.
So
that's very convincing. And Ian, I was going to ask you a different question, but I'm kind of looking at you, and something came to my mind. Like, all of this is really very convincing. It's logical. It all stacks up. But you have a lot of experience in trade, you know. But going back to an exporter, okay, who is busy just doing his business. There's shipping, logistics, there's documentation, there's orders, whatever. Is this, and if not, how are we going to get traction with, let's say, an exporter? And then I'll ask you another question on technology later.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm a 40-year banker, so you know the corporates have been my clients over the years before I went over to the dark side. You know, generally, banks promote digitisation, and a lot of them have got their pet projects that they're working on. But we mentioned it earlier, you know, to go from 2% to 30% for electronic bills of lading is going to take years. MLETR is helping, it's growing, but it's only in a handful of countries at the moment. So, as a banker and as an industry, we've got to come up with initiatives that are going to help, you know, the trade finance gap. The people that are neglected are the mid-tier traders, the SMEs. How are we going to help them get access to finance through digitalisation? Now, a lot of what we're talking about here is data, not digitisation. You know, the standards are about data standards on a document. Now, there's already initiatives everywhere around electronic invoices. That's a trusted source of data, so you can validate information from that, and it can promote lending confidence in that space.
Okay.
Sorry, just one.
Yeah.
So we started in India working a minute ago with the trades exchanges there. Now they lend to the MSME sector, which is even further down the chain. So there's a GST registry in India. So not only are we duplicate finance solution is working, but we're also validating that the invoices are generated and registered in the GST registry. So that sort of solution is already there in terms of digitalisation.
Yeah, and I think that's very convincing for an exporter when you talk in context of the invoice, because the invoice is really what he turns into money. It's his receivable that he liquidates and he turns into money. So getting back on the legal side with MLETR, just a little bit more detail. Very convincing that the law here existing, which recognised the functional equivalent of paper documents as electronic records, there is no exclusion for negotiable documents, whether it's bills of exchange, promissory notes. So law seems pretty good. Do you think the MLETR, from a legal perspective and in facilitating greater trade, is going to add some value, and maybe why?
I believe it will add a lot of value.
Okay.
Because it just is for the interpretation of the same document itself, because it creates a self-standard, and it creates also a bottom line and infrastructure for the legal system to be able to authenticate the process and the standard itself.
Okay.
So I believe it will have an impact, and also the most important is not only from the transaction point of view, is when there's a conflict.
Of course.
And because this particular area is always depend on what exactly the interpretation and what exactly how we read these particular documents. While we'll have these particular standards and everything is structured, then that one language of interpretation may be achieved in the time of the conflict, whether we use arbitrators or whether we use a courts system.
And that prompts me back to Vishnu's comment. Like, if you read the MLETR, and you should read the MLETR, there's only 19 rules, so it doesn't take you so long. And the language is pretty simple. But for international trade, there are a few very interesting ingredients you don't find in a local legislation. And number one is Article number 19. There is no barrier for acceptance of electronic records from a foreign jurisdiction. It actually says that, okay? It actually says it's acceptable. Whereas otherwise it's kind of subjective under other local laws. So that's one benefit. And also there's a very practical operational rule number 17, article number 17, that provides for the transition from an electronic record to paper, okay, or Article 18 to electronic, provided the electronic record states this within it. And Vishnu, I heard you this is where I got this idea, or studied it, because I heard you mention this before. So I think you think that's a really important element.
No, that's again, coming back to the point that I was trying to make earlier, is MLETR is something which can easily be adopted, scalable without actually causing a lot of disruption. That's a very important part. We have seen there has been focus on trade digitization for quite some time, right? We have seen various solutions emerge. Some of them don't exist as we speak today. For a lack of a model law, which is MLETR, and for a lack of standards, that is ICC DSI, if these things were not to sort of exist now, we would see a lot of effort going to waste when it comes to trade digitization. So in other words, MLETR has all sort of ingredients to allow for adoption, easier adoption, and to scale from a technology perspective, as well as having local legislations to support international trade.
Okay, that's really brilliant. And Ian, then going back to what I was going to ask you, in terms of the KYC compliance, monitoring transactions, etc., and I know you're doing great things in Singapore, probably now a lot of paper has to get scanned in certain instances, I don't know, and digit, whatever, scan. But if this process moves forward, I guess your system just becomes much more efficient, much more global than it currently is, even though I know it's a good solution already.
Yeah, look, I mean, a lot of people work with OCR technology. I was interested, someone made the point earlier about, you know, the small trading company who's only got one lender. you've probably got a guy sitting in a small office. Some of these guys have probably still got fax machines.
Yeah.
So they've literally got a stack of paper like this that they've got to scan and send into the bank. So the bank might be digital, but the client's not digital. So it's how do we get them through that ecosystem? Now, there's a lot of nice solutions. I mean, we work with Google on a really nice OCR solution that can extract data, and it's the data ultimately that you need. But if the data's in a structured format that can easily be extracted, it makes everything in that space a lot more efficient. And when we're talking about international trade, everyone focuses on the bill of lading, which is great. But if you're dealing with agricultural commodities, the bill of lading is one document, and actually probably not the most important, because if you don't have the right certifications for health declarations, quality, certificate of origin. I mean, if you're dealing with meat coming out of Argentina or Brazil and it's going to an Islamic country, you need halal certifications. So there's a lot of other documents that need to be digitized as well. So that's why the standards are so much more important in that space. But the digital initiatives focus completely on EBLs, which is 2% of the market at the moment. So there's a lot of other work we can do to create confidence in the trading community that's going to benefit far more countries than just the EBL initiative.
Okay, that's really interesting. And people keep talking about bills of lading, which is really, really important. And people have a lot of wrong perceptions about bills of lading being a document of ownership. It's a document entitling you to take position, and the ownership will be determined in the contract. And I've been involved in many legal cases about this, so not as a lawyer, but as someone to explain to the court. But before, just one thing on the law that I find interesting is about 20 years ago, we had the UNCITRAL, United Nations Convention on Independent Guarantees and Standby Letters of Credit. And there was a huge wave of enthusiasm, and I was at the forefront, and I still am at the forefront for it. But at the same time, it was only actually ratified by a handful of countries. But still, it had huge impact on the business. While even though it may have not have resulted in a law, better it results in a law. That's I'm proud of. So I'm with you, Vishnu, on this. But even where it hadn't been applied as a law, it was applied as guidance when cases happened and there was a dispute, whatever. They would refer to the UCP of ICC, Standby LC, ISP 98. But the courts would then also refer to this guidance from the United Nations. So even if we don't achieve the big success immediately, every step we take is adding value as we go forward. Would you agree with that, Pam? Yeah, you would. So any final questions from our audience? I hope you found it interesting. Nobody's sleeping anyway, so that's definitely a good sign. Any questions for audience? I think, Joel, you've got the microphone. You have the lawyer, the practitioner, the fintech, and the vintech.
Well, either it was absolutely clear or absolutely confusing.
Well, thank you, guys. That was really great. Could we give them a round of applause? Thank you. And Pam, unless do you want to say a few final words, summary on the launch and this important initiative?
Yeah, just a word of thanks, actually, to you, Vincent, for supporting the launch and for making Dubai hopefully the center of digital trade standards and policy for many years to come.
Of course.
Thank you all for participating.
Thank you.
And, please get in touch if you have feedback, questions, anything. We're happy to engage. Thank you.
Yeah, and Pam, that's what we really appreciate. You know, you are so open to hearing people's views, positive or negative or whatever, and that's wonderful. That's a great thing to see. So thank you very, very much. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you. Great job.